The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm orange hue over the city. People bustled about their daily routines, unaware of the extraordinary event that was unfolding just outside their lives. At the far end of the city, a strange, metallic object descended rapidly from the sky, its silhouette cutting through the atmosphere like a razor-sharp blade. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The spaceship, or whatever it was, seemed to tremble as it spiraled towards Earth, plummeting in an erratic, uncontrollable fall. It had come from a place beyond the stars, a world far away, and its arrival was about to change everything. The crash echoed through the streets, a thunderous roar that shook windows and rattled doors. People paused, looking up in confusion, their attention drawn to the fiery spectacle above. The object careened into the outskirts of the city, smashing into the barren fields that separated the urban sprawl from the wilderness beyond. Thick smoke billowed from the wreckage as the ground trembled beneath the impact. As the dust settled, a silence fell over the city. The ship's wreckage smoldered, the twisted metal glistening in the last rays of daylight. The fire that had raged from the crash had finally begun to die down, but the mystery was far from over. The world's attention now turned to the strange object, wondering what, or who, had arrived from the heavens above. Lila was among the first to hear about it. A member of the elite human special forces, she was accustomed to danger and mystery. Her job had always been about protecting the city from threats, both human and otherwise. But this was something entirely new. She was in the middle of a training session when the call came in. The sudden alert buzzed in her earpiece, interrupting her concentration. She had been running drills with her squad, but this was something far more pressing. "Lila, report to command immediately. We've got a situation," came the voice over the intercom. Lila's heart skipped a beat. Her instincts told her something big was coming. She had been on missions before, high-profile operations, stealthy raids, and conflict resolution, but nothing like this. She hurried to the command center, her mind racing with possibilities. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an ordinary crash. Whatever it was important. As she entered the command room, the scene before her was tense. Officers stood in front of multiple screens, their faces pale with concern. The wreckage of the alien ship dominated the main screen, its sleek metallic surface reflecting a cool blue light. No one had ever seen anything like it. "Lila, you're here. We need someone with your expertise," General Carter said, motioning for her to step forward. His voice was steady, but there was a look of uncertainty in his eyes. "What are we dealing with, sir?" she asked, her eyes scanning the screens. "We don't know, not yet. We've got an alien vessel in the outskirts. It's not like anything we've encountered before. We need to secure the area and figure out what's going on." Lila nodded. Her training had prepared her for the unknown. She had been briefed on many things, but alien encounters were not part of the curriculum. Still, she wasn't one to back down. If something had fallen from the sky, then it was her duty to investigate. The general's orders were clear. She and her team were to head to the crash site immediately and secure the perimeter. No one was allowed to approach the wreckage unless given explicit orders from command. It was a simple mission, but Lila could sense that there was something far more significant at play. She could feel it in her bones. She gathered her squad, a group of highly trained individuals, and they moved out. The city was buzzing with the news of the crash, and people were beginning to gather near the edge of the disaster zone. News helicopters circled overhead, capturing the spectacle, but the government had sealed off access to the area. Curiosity filled the air, but Lila's mind remained focused. The journey to the crash site was short but filled with tension. The sun was setting, and the shadows of the night crept over the land. As they approached the wreckage, Lila noticed the eeriness of the scene. The once bustling fields now felt empty, as if the earth itself had become aware of the alien presence. When they reached the site, the wreckage was even more bizarre than they had anticipated. The ship was unlike anything human technology could produce. It was a mixture of angular shapes and smooth, polished surfaces that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. The craft lay on its side, a massive hole in its hull where it had torn open upon impact. The scorched metal radiated heat, but there was no sign of fire, just smoldering remnants of the crash. "Stay alert," Lila commanded, her voice calm but firm. The squad spread out, securing the area and keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. There was no telling what they might find inside the wreckage. Lila cautiously approached the ship's opening. The air was thick with the smell of burnt metal, but there was something else, something subtle but strange. A faint, metallic hum emanated from within the wreckage. She paused, listening closely, but it was hard to make out the sound in the thick silence. Her hand rested on her weapon as she signaled her team to advance. Slowly, they moved toward the breach in the ship's hull, their footsteps careful and measured. Then out of the corner of her eye, Lila saw movement. At first, it was a blur, just a flicker, a shape shifting in the darkness of the ship's interior. But then she saw it clearly. A figure, tall and imposing, emerged from the wreckage. The alien warrior stood before her, his silhouette stark against the dim light. His skin was a pale shade of gray, his features sharp and angular, like something out of a nightmare. His body was covered in sleek armor, a blend of advanced technology and alien design. His eyes, glowing faintly, locked with Lila's, and for a moment she felt a strange connection, a sense of recognition, even though she had never seen anything like him before. The alien staggered slightly, as though struggling to remain upright. His breathing was labored and his movements slow. Despite the apparent strength in his form, it was clear that he was severely injured. Lila's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm, but she hesitated. The alien made no move toward her, instead standing still, as if waiting. It was almost as if he was aware of the danger, aware that they were there to either help or destroy him. "Please," the alien whispered, his voice low and raspy, "choose me." The words were soft, almost a plea, but the meaning was clear. He wasn't just asking for help, he was offering something. Lila could feel it, an unspoken request. It was more than just survival. It was as if he wanted to be seen, wanted to be acknowledged, not as an enemy, but as something else entirely. Lila stood frozen, unsure of what to do. She had never imagined she would be standing in front of an alien warrior, someone from a different world. There was no protocol for this, no plan. The situation was beyond anything she could have prepared for. And yet the alien's words echoed in her mind. "Choose me?" The alien's gaze never wavered, and for the first time in her life, Lila realized that she was not just a soldier. She was someone who could make a choice that could change everything. She stepped forward, carefully lowering her weapon. "We're here to help," she said softly, "but we need to know who you are, what happened." The warrior's eyes flickered with something akin to relief, but he said nothing more. His body slumped, and it was clear that he was losing strength fast. Lila's instincts kicked in. She motioned for her team to move in and help stabilize him. As they worked to assess his injuries, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The alien had asked her to choose him, but what choice did she really have? The world was changing, and it seemed that her fate, along with the fate of humanity, was now bound to this fallen alien warrior. And as the stars began to emerge in the sky above, Lila knew that this strange encounter was just the beginning of something far more significant, something that could alter the course of history forever. The days following the crash were filled with uncertainty. Lila couldn't shake the feeling that the alien warrior she had found, Aris, wasn't just any creature from another world. There was something about him, something different. While the world around them focused on the immediate threat of the alien invasion, Lila's thoughts often returned to Aris. She couldn't help but wonder about his past, about the secrets he held. The scientists and military personnel who had examined him could make little sense of the alien's physiology, though his body was undeniably human in some ways. They couldn't decipher his language, nor did they understand his technology, but there was a shared understanding between him and Lila. The strange, unspoken connection that had passed between them when they first met was something no one could explain. Despite his injuries, Aris was recovering. His body seemed to heal faster than any human's, though he remained silent and distant. He had been placed in a secured medical facility, monitored around the clock by a team of doctors and military personnel. Still, none of them could draw any answers from him. Aris would not speak of his origins or his people, nor would he explain why he had been on Earth. All he would say when anyone asked was one thing: "Please choose me." Lila, however, was different. When no one else was around, she would visit him in the dimly lit medical room. She would sit at his side, watching as he lay motionless, seemingly lost in his thoughts. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice was soft, almost as if he feared being heard. She often caught glimpses of the pain in his eyes, the silent weight of regret, loss, and loneliness that he carried with him. It was in these quiet moments that Lila started to understand. Aris wasn't just some fallen alien warrior who had crash-landed on Earth. He had a past, a painful, tortured past that he didn't want to share, but one that had shaped him into the being he was now. She knew there was more to him than what appeared on the surface, and she wanted to help him heal, even though she didn't fully understand what he had been through. One evening, as the sun began to set, and the last light of the day filtered through the windows of the medical room, Lila found herself sitting beside Aris once again. His breathing was slow and steady, but he hadn't spoken in hours. She glanced at the monitors attached to his body, which blinked with soft green lights. His injuries had mostly healed, but there was still a deep weariness to him, an exhaustion that went beyond mere physical recovery. "Why don't you talk to me, Aris?" Lila asked softly, not expecting an answer. She had asked the same question countless times, yet she still hoped that this time he might respond. For a long moment there was nothing but silence. Then, to her surprise, Aris shifted slightly, his eyes flickering open. They were a pale shade of blue, glowing faintly in the dim light. He turned his gaze toward her, as if recognizing her presence for the first time in a long while. "I've seen too much," Aris murmured, his voice weak but filled with an ancient sorrow. "I have done things, terrible things, things I wish I could erase, things I can never forget." Lila felt a pang in her heart. She had known that his past was filled with pain, but hearing him speak of it in such a way made it feel all the more real. She reached out and gently placed a hand on his arm, offering what little comfort she could. "Aris, whatever you've done, you don't have to carry that burden alone," she said softly. "You're not the same person you were before. You're here now, and that's what matters." Aris closed his eyes for a moment, as though trying to gather his thoughts. Then with a sigh he spoke again, this time with more clarity. "I was once a warrior, a protector," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the past. "I served an empire that was once proud and mighty. I was among the greatest of my kind, revered for my strength and loyalty. But I was betrayed by those I trusted, those I swore to protect. My people, my very own comrades, turned against me, and in the end I was cast aside, abandoned on a distant world. A world far from my home, far from everything I knew." Lila listened intently, her heart aching for him. She had never known what it felt like to be betrayed on such a scale, but she could hear the pain in his words, the deep scars that ran beneath the surface. She could tell that the warrior she saw before her wasn't just a soldier. He was someone who had given everything for a cause and had been left to die. "Why did they betray you?" Lila asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Aris looked away, staring at the ceiling, his expression distant. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "It was my people, too. Our empire grew too powerful, too ambitious. We thought we could conquer the galaxy, impose our will on every world we encountered. But in the end, it was our own pride that destroyed us. We became too consumed by power, too blind to see the consequences of our actions. My people began to fight amongst themselves. The leaders, the generals, the ones I fought alongside, they turned on each other. And I was caught in the middle." Lila's heart sank. She could feel the weight of Aris' words, the burden of his guilt and sorrow. She could see how much it hurt him to even speak about it. "I was forced to make a choice," Aris continued, his voice growing quieter. "A choice that changed everything. I chose loyalty to my people, but they saw me as a threat, a reminder of the strength they once had. They betrayed me, left me to die. And now here I am, far from home, alone, with nothing left." The silence between them grew heavy as Lila absorbed the depth of Aris' words. She could see the struggle within him, the shame, the anger, the confusion. He had once been a protector, a warrior, someone who fought for a greater cause. But now he was just a man who had lost everything. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Lila said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "You can start over. You can find a new purpose here with us." Aris turned his head to look at her, his eyes reflecting a glimmer of hope, something he had long since lost. "You would choose me?" he asked softly. Lila nodded. "I don't know what you've been through, Aris, but I know that everyone deserves a second chance. You've made mistakes, but that doesn't define you. What you do now, how you move forward, that's what matters." For the first time, Aris allowed himself to relax slightly. He didn't speak, but the look in his eyes said everything. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, if only for a moment. The door to the room opened, and one of the medical officers stepped inside, interrupting the fragile moment between Lila and Aris. "Lieutenant, we need you in the command center," the officer said quickly, her tone urgent. Lila looked at Aris one last time, offering him a reassuring smile before standing up. "I'll be back," she said softly. As she left the room and made her way to the command center, Lila's thoughts remained with Aris. She couldn't help but feel that his story was far from over. There was more to him than just a fallen warrior. He was someone who had lost everything, but was still searching for a way to redeem himself. And Lila knew, deep down, that she was going to be a part of that journey. When she arrived at the command center, the tension in the air was palpable. The screens were filled with images of alien ships massing in space, their dark silhouettes a stark reminder of the looming threat. The invasion was coming, and humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet. But as Lila looked around at her fellow soldiers, she realized that her mission had just changed. It wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about something bigger, about helping a fallen warrior find his way, and in doing so, perhaps saving humanity in the process. Lila wasn't sure how it would all play out, but one thing was certain. The connection she felt to Aris was only the beginning. There was much more to be done, and she was ready to face it all. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Lila's mind was split between her duties as a member of the human forces and her growing bond with Aris, the alien warrior. There was a constant sense of urgency in the air, and the clock seemed to tick faster as the alien threat loomed ever closer. The world was on the brink of chaos, but Lila couldn't help but feel that, in some strange way, Aris was the key to saving them all. She spent her days at the command center, coordinating the human defense efforts, but her thoughts often drifted back to Aris. His quiet strength, the haunted look in his eyes, and the burden of his past weighed heavily on her heart. She knew that he wasn't just a fallen warrior. He was someone who had lost everything, and yet here he was, still alive, still fighting, still searching for redemption. One afternoon, as Lila was going over the latest intelligence reports, she received a message from the general. It was an urgent request for her presence in the briefing room. As she made her way down the hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. When she entered the briefing room, General Carter was standing in front of a large screen, his face grave. The atmosphere was tense, and the usual hum of the command center had quieted. Several high-ranking officers and military strategists were gathered around, all eyes fixed on the screen. Lila stepped forward, her brow furrowed. "What's going on, sir?" she asked, her voice calm but curious. "We've received intel," General Carter began, his voice low and serious. "The alien forces are making their move. They're massing just beyond the edge of Earth's atmosphere, and they've begun deploying advanced warships. We estimate that they'll be in orbit within the next 48 hours. The room fell silent as the implications of the news sank in. The alien invasion wasn't just a threat anymore, it was happening, and it was happening fast. "We've been preparing for this, but we're still not sure what we're up against," the general continued. "These ships are unlike anything we've seen before. Their weapons are far beyond anything our military can handle. We need to figure out a way to counter them, and fast." Lila felt a tightness in her chest. The human forces had been preparing for some time, but nothing could have truly prepared them for an invasion of this scale. She looked at the screen where the alien ships were being tracked. Their sleek, angular designs stood out against the backdrop of space like shadows waiting to strike. "Any word from Aris?" Lila asked, her voice quiet. General Carter nodded. "We've been in contact with him. He's ready to assist, but we don't know exactly how much help he can offer. His technology is advanced, but we still don't fully understand it. He's agreed to share whatever he can, but he's reluctant to reveal too much about his people or the war they were fighting." "There's a lot we don't know." Lila nodded, her mind racing. She had to find a way to work with Aris to unlock the potential of his knowledge and technology. She couldn't ignore the feeling that the answers they needed lay with him. He had been part of an advanced civilization, and he might be the only one who could help them win this fight. "I want to talk to him," Lila said, her voice firm. "I need to know what he can do. We can't waste any more time." The general's eyes met hers, a mixture of respect and concern in his gaze. "I'll arrange for you to meet with him, but be careful, Lila. He's not just a soldier. He's a survivor of a war, and we still don't know everything about him. His past is dangerous, and it's not something we can afford to overlook." Lila nodded, her resolve clear. "I understand. I'll be careful." She left the briefing room and made her way to the medical facility where Aris was being kept. As she walked down the sterile hallways, she thought about what the general had said. Aris wasn't just a soldier. He was a fallen warrior, a man with a history of pain and betrayal. She didn't know everything about him, but she could sense that he was a man struggling with his past, trying to find a way forward. And she knew that if they were going to win this war, they needed him. When she entered the medical room, Aris was sitting up, his eyes closed as if lost in thought. The room was quiet, the only sound the soft beeping of the monitors attached to his body. He looked different now, less fragile than before, but there was still a certain weariness in his posture. The weight of his past seemed to hang over him like a cloud, and Lila could see that he was still struggling with something deeper than his physical wounds. "Aris," Lila said softly, walking over to his side. "We need to talk." Aris opened his eyes slowly, as if the effort took everything he had. When he looked at her, his gaze was steady, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes, as if he knew what was coming. "I know what you're going to ask," he said, his voice hoarse. "You want to know how I can help you defeat them, the invaders." Lila nodded. "Yes, I need to know everything you can teach us, your technology, your knowledge, anything that can give us an advantage." Aris paused, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Lila thought he might refuse, but then he spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of his past. "My people were not kind," he said slowly. "We were conquerors, destroyers of worlds. We thought we could rule the galaxy, that our power was unmatched. But in the end, it was our arrogance that brought us down. I fought for a cause, but I no longer believe in it. What you're facing now, it's a reflection of the same mistakes we made. You're being pulled into a war that has no end, a war that will consume you if you're not careful." Lila listened carefully, her heart heavy with the realization that Aris wasn't just offering advice, he was sharing a warning. He had lived through a war that had torn his people apart, and now he was watching as humanity faced the same fate. "I don't want you to make the same mistakes we made," Aris continued. "You must understand the enemy. They are not like you. They are not like any force you've encountered before. Their technology is far superior and their will to conquer is unmatched. But there is one thing that you have that they don't." "What's that?" Lila asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Hope," Aris said, his voice firm. "You still have hope. You still fight for something greater than yourselves. They fight for power, for control. But in the end, that is their weakness. They will destroy each other from within, just as my people did." Lila absorbed his words, feeling a sense of understanding beginning to grow. Aris wasn't just a warrior. He was a man who had lived through the worst of what war could offer and had come out the other side with a deep, painful wisdom. He wasn't just a weapon. He was a guide, someone who could help humanity avoid the same mistakes his people had made. "Tell me how we can fight them," Lila said, her voice filled with determination. "Tell me what we need to do." Aris looked at her for a long moment as if weighing his options. Then, with a quiet sigh, he nodded. "I will teach you," he said softly. "But you must understand this. Your fight is not just about defeating them. It's about surviving. It's about holding on to everything that makes you human, everything that makes you worth saving." Lila nodded, her heart full of resolve. The stakes were high, but she knew that, with Aris by their side, humanity might have a chance to survive this war. Together, they would face the alien forces and stand against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. And in that moment, Lila realized that the true battle wasn't just for Earth. It was for the soul of humanity itself. The days seemed to blur together in a haze of tension, anticipation, and preparation. With Aris now actively working alongside the human forces, Lila's role had shifted. No longer just a soldier, she had become a bridge between two worlds, humanity and the fallen warrior who had once been part of a galaxy-spanning empire. Her time was split between the command center, where strategies for the impending invasion were being formed, and the medical facility, where she continued her quiet sessions with Aris. Each time she met with him, there was a sense of progress. Aris had begun to share more details about his past, about the alien technology he had once commanded, about the battles he had fought, and about the fall of his people. His eyes, which had once seemed distant and cold, were beginning to show signs of warmth, of trust. He wasn't just an alien soldier anymore. He was a man who had suffered, and now, in his own way, he was fighting for something larger than himself. The alliance between Aris and the humans was fragile, but it was all they had. The alien invaders, who had once been part of the same empire as Eris, were coming for Earth with a force that seemed impossible to overcome. They were a relentless, powerful enemy, one that had crushed civilizations before. But Lila refused to believe that it was a fight they couldn't win. With Eris's help, humanity had learned about the invaders' technology, their tactics, and even their weaknesses. But there was still much to do, and time was running out. Lila sat at the command center late one evening, poring over the latest intelligence reports. The alien warships were drawing closer. Earth's defenses were strong, but they were not yet prepared for the scale of the attack that was coming. The skies above were filled with tension as every eye in the world turned toward the stars, waiting for the inevitable. The room was filled with the low murmur of voices as military strategists and officers exchanged information. Lila's mind was elsewhere, though. She thought about Eris, about the days he had spent training with the human forces, teaching them how to fight like his people. He had given them access to technology they had never dreamed of, showing them how to harness energy weapons, how to build shields, and even how to communicate using frequencies that were once beyond their reach. But there was still one thing they lacked: their own resolve, their own belief in victory. "Lieutenant Lila," General Carter's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to face him as he approached. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were still full of determination. "The enemy is on the move. We have a window of about 24 hours before their fleet enters Earth's orbit. We need to make our final preparations." Lila nodded, the weight of his words pressing down on her. It was a lot to take in. Everything had led up to this point, and now, in the final hours, they had to act. "Are the defenses ready?" she asked, trying to steady her thoughts. "We're as ready as we can be," the general replied. "But we don't have much time. Our forces are scattered across the planet, preparing for a full-scale defense, but we're outmatched. They've got warships, fighters, weapons we've never seen before. Our best chance is a coordinated attack with everything we've got: air forces, ground troops, and our new technology courtesy of Eris." Lila's eyes flickered to the corner of the room where Eris was sitting. He had been working with a team of human engineers, overseeing the installation of advanced weaponry and shields. Despite the progress they'd made, the reality of the situation was daunting. No matter how many weapons they had, no matter how much Eris had taught them, there was no escaping the fact that the alien fleet was far more powerful. "I'll make sure everything's in place," Lila said, rising from her seat. She felt a surge of urgency. It wasn't just her responsibility to lead the defense. It was also her responsibility to keep hope alive for the people she was fighting for. As she walked toward the door, she turned back to the general. "Is there any news from the front lines?" "The outer colonies are holding, but just barely. The aliens are pushing forward with overwhelming force. They've been systematically destroying outposts, and now it's only a matter of time before they reach Earth." Lila didn't need to hear more. She had already known the gravity of the situation. Earth was on the brink of destruction, and if they didn't act now, humanity could be lost. "Let's get to work," she said, determination in her voice. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Lila worked alongside her squad to prepare for the coming battle. Weapons were checked, systems were calibrated, and soldiers were briefed. Every human on Earth knew what was at stake, and everyone was ready to do whatever it took to defend their home. Lila found herself thinking back to her first encounter with Eris, the way he had looked at her with those intense, glowing eyes, and the way he had whispered, "Please choose me." At the time, she hadn't fully understood what he meant. But now, with the weight of the impending battle pressing down on them, it was starting to make sense. Eris wasn't just a warrior, he was a symbol of something greater. He was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was hope. And as long as humanity was willing to fight, there was still a chance they could win. Later that evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting the city in a golden light, Lila made her way to the medical facility once more. Eris was there, still overseeing the final stages of the weapons systems that had been adapted from his alien technology. He was focused, his eyes scanning the monitors with intense concentration. Despite the quiet confidence he projected, Lila could tell he was nervous. He had been through countless battles, but this one was different. It was personal. She walked into the room, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a quiet understanding between them, a shared knowledge that this might be the last time they would see each other before the battle began. "We're ready," Lila said, breaking the silence. The defenses are set and the troops are in position. We'll give them everything we've got. Eris nodded, but there was no hint of relief in his eyes. I hope it's enough, he said quietly. I've seen civilizations fall, I've seen entire worlds destroyed, but this is different. You don't just fight for survival here, Lila. You're fighting for your future. I know, Lila replied, her voice firm, and we won't let them take it, not without a fight. There was a long pause as Eris looked at her, his gaze lingering on her face. It was as though he was trying to understand her, trying to make sense of the connection that had grown between them in such a short time. Finally, he spoke again, his voice softer this time. You've chosen, he said. You've chosen to fight for something greater than yourself. And that makes all the difference. Lila smiled slightly, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her. We all have something worth fighting for. Eris's eyes softened, and for the first time there was a hint of a smile on his lips. Then let us fight together, he said. Lila turned and left the room, her heart filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. The time for words was over. The battle was coming, and there was no turning back. She didn't know what the outcome would be, but one thing was certain. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. The next day, the skies above Earth grew darker as the alien fleet entered orbit. The world watched, holding its breath. The ships were immense, their sleek angular designs casting long shadows over the planet below. They were unstoppable until humanity found a way to fight back. Lila stood at the command center, her eyes focused on the screens in front of her. The alien forces were moving quickly, and Earth's defenses were stretched thin. But Lila had a plan. She had seen the potential of Eris's technology, and she knew that the key to their victory lay in harnessing the power of what they had learned from him. All units prepare for launch, General Carter's voice crackled over the intercom. This is it, our last chance. Lila nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The battle was about to begin, and the fate of Earth rested in their hands. As the first wave of human forces launched into the sky, Lila felt a surge of adrenaline. She was ready. They all were. It was a fight for their survival, a fight for the future of the human race. And no matter what happened next, Lila knew one thing for certain. They would fight until the very end.